welcome to Pop Nerdery, the show that is nerdier than a 15-minute YouTube tutorial on subdividing quintuplets in 4/4 time. University.
I think I can do that.
So this is a place where you're allowed to have an opinion on anything in pop culture, but you gotta have more than just a little bit to say. We'll pick out some of the headlines that have us talking this week, then do a deep dive, and lastly give our pop culture recommendations for you. If this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. I'm your host, Brent, and with me, as always, is the Nienub to my Lando Calrissian Topher, and the Logray to my Wicket, Dave. How we doing, gents?
I have to be an Ewok? Come on.
Jump.
At least I made you the leader of the Ewoks.
I guess, but my hatred of the Ewoks is well documented in these parts.
Which is exactly why you got the Ewok reference, pal.
See, I trim my beard and I don't have to be the Ewok anymore. So, I guess if you had gone clean shaven, then I would have had to, maybe remove my jaw or something.
Then I could have been Night Nub?
I mean, to be fair, we both got shafted. Speaking of being shafted, you're not going to be shafted? Following at PopNerdery on Twitter.
Good segue.
You can follow us there on the Twitters, at PopNerdery, PopNerdery. We comment on things as they happen. We inappropriately use emojis, hashtags, subtweeting. I am sometimes on fleek, as the kids say. And aside from that, I basically just misuse that platform.
Always on fleek.
Traditionally. You got 3 ways to listen to the show. The first is to fire up the old iTunes, jump over to that podcast section, fire up that search box, type in Pop Nerdery. You can rate, you can review, you can subscribe. You can tell us how good our words sound in your ear holes. And if that doesn't sound good, then consult your doctor. The second way, fire up your internet browser of choice. Head on over to popnerdery.com. We archive all the episodes there. We argue in the comments. We argue in the Pop Nerdery /talkback section. Sometimes we discuss entirely things that we've never touched on before, which lead to just absolute revelations for everyone, which is exciting. So hit us up there. You're going to like it. I'm going to like it. The third way, whistle the Thundercats theme into Dave Folt's voicemail mailbox, and he will come podcast over your shoulder in real life, IRL, as they say.
Ho! Thundercats, ho!
See, this is what I'm talking about.
I'll do that. Don't
You can't resist it. It's clear.
I will do it. Speaking of... Nope, no segue there. Don't even have one.
Speaking of Thundercats...
I was going to say,
Speaking of
the Eye of Thundera, no, still can't do it.
See, this is what I'm talking about. You whistle that theme, Dave Folt's going to be there.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was traveling. I couldn't think of a segue. Anyway...
of Thundercats, Chitara really filled out that 80s jumpsuit, eh?
Holy cow. There's no way for me to segue from there to the sad topic that I have to talk about first.
Speaking of awakenings that I had as a child.
Oh, jeez.
I'm sorry, Dave. Sorry, did you have news?
Sad news again, guys.
Speaking of long, overdue transitions to the news section.
We're going to talk about our nerd origins in the B segment today. We're going to deep dive on how this happened to us, how we got stuck doing this podcast, how life led us down this path. But first, we're going to talk about the news, and I have to start sad so that way we can pay our respects and move on. But the world has been a cruel, cruel bitch to us all yet again. And last week we talked about David Bowie. This week we are forced to talk about Mr. Alan Rickman. Sir Alan Rickman, I believe. I'm pretty sure he's been knighted by
He wasn't, he should have been, so fuck it. Let's just use it.
So Sir Alan Rickman, who gave us the greatest action movie villain of all time. And no, I'm not talking about Severus Snape, you 12-year-olds.
You could have been.
I love Harry Potter. I'm down with it. I'm fine. But what I'm talking about here is I'm talking about Hans Gruber.
The world's greatest Christmas movie.
Yes, the world's greatest Christmas movie villain of all time. A regular Krampus, if you will.
Amen. Alan Rickman was an absolute screen gem. If you don't know him for Grubman, you know him from Harry Potter. If you don't know him from Harry Potter, maybe you know him as Megatron from, a Kevin Smith movie. But seriously, if
How about Sheriff of Nottingham from Robin Hood, Prince of
the
Thieves?
only guy who does an actual English accent in the entirety of that movie is the one guy who can do it right. Like, my favorite Rickman story is probably that it's not specific, but every single actor who was kind of like fringe, learning their craft, whatever else, talked about how scary it was to share a screen with him. Because you look at him like, this is a dude who's done Shakespeare. Like, this dude is no fucking joke, and I've got to come in here and tell him a dick joke.
Yeah.
To Alan Rickman. Like, this is horrifying.
Kevin Smith used to tell a story about that's how he scared Jason Mewes into being a real actor and learning his lines. Was that he would tell him...
Dogma?
Yeah, for Dogma.
Like, you've got to go in and deal with Rickman. Like, you can fuck around with that snoochie boochie shit with me, but you go in there, Alan Rickman will fuck you up if you come in here unprepared.
Yeah, he's a real Brit, and he, sure enough, Jason Mewes, the, drug-addled young man that he was, came in fucking off book for Dogma. He knew his shit.
No, not only did that, but was so scared he learned the entire script.
Yeah.
Not just his parts. Like, memorized the entirety of the script. He could do everyone's parts.
He knew everybody's
He
parts.
was so scared of Rickman that he was like, I'll just learn all the parts, and then dude can never get mad at me.
Yeah. My favorite story about Rickman is that his first role was Hans Gruber. He came in, pointed at the fences, and knocked it out of the park.
Slap the
his first time
shit out of this.
Yeah,
we talked about this in the talkback, but maybe the best thing to come out of this is on Die Hard when he spoilers. If you haven't seen Die Hard, go watch Die Hard, then resume this podcast.
If you haven't seen Die Hard, just go and jump into a well.
Okay, I started with go see the movie, but I guess you could kill yourself too. Jesus, Dave. But
yes, let's kill our 3 listeners. No.
Brent's right. So in the penultimate scene, when Hans Gruber falls to his untimely death, it was supposed to be on 3. The director was a bit of a method kind of guy and launches him on 2, so that his face as he actually falls, because he's in some sort of harness that he falls to the ground, is actual horror. Which before I was like, Rickman is a hell of an actor, and now I look at it as a guy who goes, oh, the stunt guy just fucked me. The stunt guy just fucked me.
Yep, and that was his first film.
Even better. Like, honestly, I truly enjoy that scene even more now. Before it was like, oh, he's really good. Now it's like, I'm in on the joke, and that's kind of amazing.
Yeah,
and that's why dorks like us pay attention to the behind the scenes stuff, because it makes the movie going experience that much richer.
Much better.
But the world is definitely not richer with the loss of Mr. Rickman.
We bring up the official stance of the PopNerdery Podcast. Fuck cancer.
Fuck cancer.
Pour one out for Alan Rickman next time you're having a... moving on to happier and more R-rated fare. Deadpool. There's a lot of Deadpool news this week, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. First and foremost, the movie screened at a fan event this week. Ryan Reynolds, Rob Liefeld, the creator of the character, Stan Lee, some of the other stars of the movie were there to introduce the movie, and it was a surprise screening. It wasn't, nobody knew this was going to happen.
Huh.
The people who were there to watch the movie were already, they were destined to like this movie because they were at a Deadpool fan event. But you can also say that maybe these people would be the toughest critics. And the movie got really great reviews on Twitter from the people that were there. So it makes me all the more excited to see it. The movie is coming out on February 12th, and I honestly could not be more excited. They did confirm that there will be an after credits scene for this movie, so don't leave before the credits are over. If the trailers are any indication, I imagine it's going to be pretty funny. So there was also, Topher, you mentioned that you saw a petition to get a PG-13 cut of this movie.
Yeah. I don't know who starts this. Like, I'm struggling with the motivation for why this is a good thing. The only good thing that came out of it is that we got a couple amazing Ryan Reynolds responses, mostly about him wanting to see 9.5 months and his mom telling him to, sit down and shut the fuck up. But also just like the in-character response of, this movie is for some people, this movie is not for other people. those other people can go fuck themselves, which is the like most perfect Deadpool response to this. So
Yeah.
I don't know why we would try to, this is it's a filthy, vulgar character.
Yeah.
Let the man have his movie.
Yeah, and he did also say that if they did do a PG-13 cut, the movie would be about 4 minutes long, which I think is a good sign for a Deadpool movie.
I honestly think they should offer that. You can pay a full ticket price and go see a 4-minute Deadpool movie. $50 or whatever, and go get that movie. If that's what you want, then that's what you get.
That would be such a Deadpool, that would be such an apropos thing. Yeah, I'd love that.
And not even tell them the runtime, just, hey, here's Deadpool.
You're getting the PG-13 version. You get 10 minutes of trailers, the whole thing. You sit down, boom, 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 4 minutes and out. Thank you for your $13.
Nailed it. Right, so this movie is getting love, obviously, from the fanboys that got invited to go see it early, but it's also getting love from Fox. Fox is already talking about doing a sequel, and the one that Ryan Reynolds has talked about is a Cable and Deadpool, which, if you don't know, Cable and Deadpool have been kind of, pseudo partners, not that Cable likes it in the comics, but they've been pseudo partners for a little while now, and have even done X Factor and things like that together. And
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The only reason that gives me pause is I think we heard the exact same thing about Fantastic Four before it came out. How the studio was really happy and they were greenlighting Fantastic Four 2,
right.
and that
was
all of the people making the decision said, "Great job, Fantastic Four."
Yeah.
So
I would be a little bit more hesitant if I hadn't already seen so many good trailers for the movie. But I agree with you. I don't trust Fox until I've seen the movie and I liked it.
No.
But who doesn't want a time-traveling buddy cop movie with Ryan Reynolds quipping to a Cable as the straight man?
If you'll give me Idris Elba as Cable, then I'm in.
Idris Elba as everyone.
I mean, to be fair, honestly, that's my response to everyone. But in all honesty, I want Idris Elba to play Cable. You're right. I want Idris Elba to play everyone, but I want Stringer Bell as Cable as the partner to Deadpool. Because just fuck, the guy who can't shut up, won't stop cracking wise, talking versus. And I'm not saying there's not a metaverse tie-in with The Wire, but that kind of Idris Elba performance would provide the absolute perfect foil to that.
Yeah. Rent, do you have any ideas about who you'd like to see as Cable?
We just talked about Bruce Campbell a couple of weeks ago.
Shit.
Oh, wow.
That would be
Campbell
really
in this movie.
I feel like that would be.
I felt good about Idris Elba, but I think I'm reconsidering now. Shit.
I was gonna say.
Imagine a gray-haired Bruce Campbell as Cable with all this mechanic. I think that would work. I'd like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say Liam Neeson because comicbook.com had a concept art of Liam Neeson as Cable, but holy fuck that and fuck Liam Neeson. I want some Bruce Campbell Cable.
Bruce Campbell, shit. Yeah.
God, that'd be so good.
I mean, think of Bruce Campbell and Ryan Reynolds on screen together.
It's nuts.
And you're asking Bruce Campbell not to be hilarity. You're asking him to be grizzled, grumpy, but funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. That works for me.
I want to point out right now that Bruce Campbell as Cable trademark PopNerdery Podcast. Fox, call us.
We would like royalties for this idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not even going to be able to finish the news segment. I'm just going to be thinking about Bruce Campbell as Cable in this movie.
No, we can just skip it now. Shit.
Oh, man.
Let's just sit here in quiet contemplation for 45 more minutes.
So that one worked for you guys. Good to hear.
Holy cow. You just blew my mind a little bit. All right. If I don't move on now, I'm never going to.
God damn. It's so good.
That's the best idea. I don't even care if you take Cable's metal arm away and just put a chainsaw at the end of it. Whatever I got to do. Whatever I got to do to get this movie.
Again, we can incorporate that multiverse. I was anti the Wire multiverse coming in, but the Chainsaw Arm multiverse can. Yes.
Oh man.
Someone get Fox on the phone.
Wow.
Does anyone have a secretary who can call Fox? We should do that.
Secretary. All right. If I don't move on now, we're never going to move on.
No,
We're just going to talk about Bruce Campbell for another hour.
Quickly.
Warner Brothers today, they're doing a special on the CW. I think it's either before or after The Flash. No, before the premiere of Legends of Tomorrow. We're recording this on Tuesday to date ourselves. But they're doing this special called Dawn of the Justice League, hosted by comic book superstar Jeff Johns and Kevin Smith, who we've already talked about. They're hosting this thing where they're going to talk about the DC movie universe in a lead up to Batman vs Superman. They want to kind of introduce their movie universe a little bit. Marvel had the foresight and the planning to get all their individual characters out there first before they dropped Avengers, but DC is running outside with their pants around their ankles, trying to make this happen quickly. So,
is Superman in it?
Well said.
In order to make it look like they're not, they're doing this kind of intro thing, which honestly I'm fine with, and I personally like Kevin Smith, so I'm really fine with him being like a DC Comics shill. I'm totally cool with that too. If it means I get a little bit more information about the Justice League, I'm cool with that. And that's exactly what happened today. You guys are looking at it in your notes, but PopNerdery listeners, you can find this. Yes, PopNerdery listeners, you can find this on the internet everywhere now. But there was the first concept art look at the Justice League together was released today, and holy cow, that thing looks good. All the characters, let's at least say this. Let's at least say this. All the characters are at least on model. They have mostly accurate costumes, and none of them are wearing black leather.
No, everybody looks good. Superman looks like a dildo, but that's just Superman's fault.
We've documented heavily how much of a dildo you think Superman is.
Yeah.
And I am mostly in agreement. I'm not a big Superman guy myself, but we get our first look at our first full look, I guess, at Jason Momoa as Aquaman, where he has the Aquaman like logo on his belt buckle, and
his trident looks rad. The only thing and honestly, this is the first thing that popped in my head is like, oh, the underwater guy looks like a hippie. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, all the other Aquamans have been clean cut, and I'm not saying that's an on model character requirement until recently. I don't understand why if you live in an underwater world, you would want more drag as opposed to less. Even if you're the king of the sea, like, you still,
I guess from a scientific perspective, you're a little bit right on that one.
He would beat me up. Like, let's be clear, Aquaman would kick my ass. But, I just always, that was one of the things that I didn't like about this. His trident looks rad, the suit looks rad, everything else looks cool. It's just like, he's got this big mane of hair, and it's like, that's a lot of drag coefficient.
More importantly, how can Aquaman talk to the whales and dolphins? They're mammals.
He can't. No, he's got an uneasy alliance with them at best.
Okay.
Every day he has to be worried like a gang of porpoises are going to come in and fuck his world up.
All right, thanks for clearing that up. It's always bothered me.
Also, that's completely non-canonical. I'm just assuming this.
Oh.
I do like if you look at I think Tower of Babel and some of the most recent animated stuff has the Aquaman with the beard and the long hair, and he also has like a hook for an arm.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that at some point we get Aquaman with hook for arm as part of this.
Make him like a pirate.
It's just too on the nose for me.
Yeah.
Arg, he's from the sea. Also, look at me hook arm.
Well, I mean,
at some point we'll get a patch over me eye. Arg, Aquaman.
I mean, if they've already decided to go Jason Momoa, you got to go full hook arm. Is all I'm saying.
Well, then why not just end up at is it Family Guy who has the Mariner with all four limbs are replaced with stumps? Yep. Like, let's just fucking go there then. Just like, arg, have I built into me wooden arm, me hand to hold me trident. Arg.
So also in this concept image, you can see a little bit of Cyborg, who looks like Cyborg in the comics, which is great. Cyborg is one of my favorites. I've always liked that character. And also, you can kind of see a Flash. he's kind of obscured a little bit, and I bet they did that on purpose because they currently have a Flash TV show.
And again, this is going to come out as me not liking Superman, but his cape is covering Wonder Woman and Flash, like basically the two characters who aren't Batman that I'm interested in. So, like, really, like, go shit on someone else's character model here, dickhead. Like, I'm sick of the way they. And again, maybe Batman v Superman will treat Wonder Woman in a way that's super respectful and awesome, and she'll get a fully fleshed out character. But I really fucking doubt it. So again, like, dramatic image. Look at Superman's cape covering up half of Wonder Woman and 3/4 of Flash. Like, fuck this guy.
Here's I hope you do know that Superman himself didn't draw this concept image. Just I don't know that. I don't know where your line of reality is drawn, but I'm just fucking with you. Speaking of Wonder Woman, we've seen in recent days and weeks, we've seen set photos. Wonder Woman is filming now, set during World War I. Set photos look regular, I guess. You can't really gain much from that. We're not seeing
regular.
Yeah, regular. They're
They've
fine.
Had plenty of fiber.
They're okay. But they did release the official logo, which looks, it looks like the Wonder Woman logo, except it's roughly, the same style as the Superman and Batman logos we've gotten. So that's DC. Netflix, their CCO, their Chief Creative Officer, came out this week and said that any and all characters from their Netflix Marvel series are fair game for a spinoff.
Hallelujah.
Which is kind of cool. Because we've talked before, we did a full B segment about it, about how we think that is probably the best forum for these characters, the best format for us to see. And shortly after he said this, news broke that even before Daredevil Season 2, which is going to feature Punisher and Elektra, has dropped, even before that series drops in March, they already have a Punisher series in development, which is pretty awesome.
I'm into that.
Yeah, especially because they have a chance to see this character on screen and dive into him a little bit before they rode the bike before they bought it, I guess. Right. And then also Jessica Jones was officially renewed for Season 2.
Truly, this just made my 2016 when I heard this.
Oh yeah, totally.
I'm still super excited for Season 2 because holy shit, the part of Season 1 I had already seen, got to the end, was fantastic, and might be my favorite thing that Netflix has done, maybe ever, and I really love a lot of Netflix shows.
So we all love Jessica Jones.
So why The Last Man?
Why The Last Man is where we're going next. I feel bad about that for days. Why The Last Man? We have some updates. We talked about this on a previous episode, so I felt the necessity to bring it back up. There are some updates that were given to us this week that comics series creator Brian K. Vaughan has been officially announced as one of the exec producers of the show. This is always good. This is always good when you allow the people who created the IP to come on board and have a say in different, when you bring it to a different media. He's going to have a co-exec that's more of a TV guy, but Brian K. Vaughan has worked on shows like Lost in the past, so he knows how this works. So there's that. FX has officially given us an idea that this thing is moving forward because there have been some false starts in the past. And then lastly, we're going to talk about some hashtag science. We already talked about drag coefficients today, so that's great.
So we already got some science in. Let's get more science in.
Yeah. So scientists today, they really wanted to be a buzzkill. They came out and said that, listen, guys, Spider-Man can't exist because we determined that geckos are roughly the size and weight limit for animals that have sticky foot pads to stick to substances. And that made me sad because I really wanted to continue to believe in my childish love for Spider-Man.
I kind of feel like those movies were so bad that this is science just now punishing them. Like, you had a lot of chances to make, like, an amazing franchise, and then we'd have let this alone. But you shit the bed so many times that now we're going to be like, you know what? Fuck you. Spider-Man can't exist.
They would have buried it like Nixon tried to bury Watergate.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, they would have been like, anyways, the moon's gonna explode. Spider-Man can't possibly exist. And then even like in a Friday news report at like 3:30 in the afternoon.
They did.
I didn't read the full report, but I do think that we can hold out hope as nerds that the actual chemical makeup of the webbing,
the density.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the amalgam of molecules that
the molecular density at a subatomic level could potentially provide more weight-bearing load than what's previously been thought due to the crystalline matrix of the web material.
Right. You don't know how many of those electrons have actually fully bonded.
Sure. What's the pass rate? What's the pass rate between those electrons? You don't know.
Right.
No one knows.
How many moles are? I don't know how.
Now we're really fucking talking here.
Kilojoules of whatnot. No, yeah, and I do like. You guys could write comics because half of comics is coming up with pseudoscience to explain things. They did say
wrote a year of Spider-Man right there.
Right. They did allow us to hold out hope. They said that there are two ways that Spider-Man could exist, and they made me laugh thinking about the visual. The first one is that Spider-Man would need to have sticky foot pads or whatever is on a gecko's foot covering 80% of his body, and it would all need to touch the wall at the same time to support his weight. That was a funny visual for me to imagine a comic book artist drawing.
Yeah, that's hand, foot, knee, crotch. I'm talking about.
Yeah, so he would pretty much just need to like slug crawl up the side of a building. But they also said there's one other way. The other way is that if Spider-Man had feet that were 1 meter long, because this is science, we don't talk about inches.
Stupid English system of measurement.
1 meter long and 40 centimeters wide.
So he's Bozo the Clown in the suit.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually even worse than that. It looks way worse than that. But that's another great way for me to imagine, Todd McFarlane trying to draw that Spider-Man and make him look badass.
Yeah, he crawls up the wall, and then he plays the ball game. And then he crawls up the wall, and he plays the ball game. Like, yeah, what's not to like about this? I would actually read this Spider-Man.
I like it.
And finally.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take our first break. When we return, we're going to talk about our nerd origin stories.
Welcome back to the PopNerdery Podcast. Tonight, we wanted to talk about something that is near and dear to our hearts, the things that truly set us on the path to being nerds. This is something that every single nerd kind of looks back at and goes, yes, this is the path that led me here. And I think that I think that it'll be both individual to all of us, but also will follow a very similar path in terms of kind of the first time that you developed a love for something that was outside of the pop culture norm, maybe, or was specifically nerdy. The first time that you really kind of realized that something that you really loved independently was very different from your peer group, and that maybe talking about it at school was a great way to get your ass kicked. And then finally, that one show, movie, comic, book that led you to kind of deep dive into the world that it presented as and went, I want to know as much about this world as I possibly can. I kind of feel like that's the typical nerd trajectory where we all have a similar arc, but we all come to it as different ways. So tonight we wanted to kind of talk about our nerd origin stories and how we all came to a place where in our 30s we host a PopNerdery Podcast. So Brent,
I love it.
I want to start with you.
Okay.
What was the first nerd? I feel like this is almost like Dear Penthouse letters. Like Brent, what was the first nerd experience you had?
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, as the son of a microbiologist, I feel like I was
good start.
Kind of predestined toward this path. My father used to take me into his lab to like burn mealworms with liquid nitrogen, when I was 6 or 7 years old. So,
that sounds pretty
my
good.
Appreciation of what?
That sounds pretty good. Can I go with him now and do that?
Yeah, probably. You can probably call up Papa Fatty and ask him to take care of some mealworms. But no, like that either leads two places: huge nerd or serial killer. And to this day, I've killed 0 people, and I'm looking to keep that track.
I mean, there's still time. There's still time, Brent.
Sure, there is.
You can come around on this.
Yeah. But honestly, my dad was not a guy who watched sports. My dad was not a guy who tried to talk politics or business with people he met. He latched on to people that were more interested in talking about the land of Pern and the dragons that lived there, or Dinotopia, or what Jim Henson's production company was working on next. And that's kind of what I figured I would go to, is The Dark Crystal. It was a movie that was shown to me at a pretty young age. We had Fraggle Rock on, when I was growing up, and just that world seemed very normal for me as a child to kind of be living in and think as a real place. And so that was probably the first thing that I got into. So what about you, Toph?
That's a beautiful segue. I'm basically in the same place. When my parents found out that they were going to have a child, and my mother would have to stay up at weird hours to sustain a human being, she demanded to my father, who I love very much and is a notorious cheapskate, to go ahead and pay out for HBO, so that at 2:30 there was something to watch.
Yeah.
And we did, and thankfully I was raised on a steady dose of Fraggle Rock and Jim Henson, to where looking at things like Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, that was my norm as a child. It was just
yes.
I barely remember specifically as a kid going, okay, I can watch some Fraggle Rock, and then I got Sesame Street, and then Mr. Rogers comes on, and I get it, but I kind of just want to go play now. I don't really want to go watch Mr. Rogers. He seems nice enough, but yeah, Jesus, I get it.
No, that's
Rogers.
funny. That's the only time my family ever had HBO as well, was when I was really young, and I didn't even realize until I was 20 that Fraggle Rock aired on HBO.
On HBO.
That was kind of a shocker for me. So
yeah, so my early TV interactions were Henson based, and so it just became that was the standard for things. And then when I got a little bit older, it moved to the Muppet Show, so that was normal. After the Disney Channel picked up those in syndication, so truly, Jim Henson did more for my worldview than maybe anyone else did. Dave, how did you get so ruined?
I would say that my Henson exposure was limited mostly to Sesame Street, but I had a little bit of a different path than you guys. My dad wasn't a nerd in the same way that we're a nerd, but he had his obsessions, right? My dad was obsessed with music. My dad plays 4, maybe 5 instruments.
Awesome.
Well,
that sounds more useful.
And he's obsessed with music. Passed that obsession on mainly in my nerdy love of Rush, but I could sing you the lyrics to the Temple of Syrinx.
That's okay.
I know some Rush.
The gauntlet has been thrown down.
But the other thing that my dad was a big nerd for was cars, and the way that he lived that nerdery, I guess. We'll call it, is that he built model cars and model airplanes and passed that on to me. And that's kind of where I got the gene. Most of my nerdiness, I guess you'll say, has been supported and expanded, and all of that has come through collectibles and stuff. For me, when I was a kid, it was always in scholastic books that were on the things that I recognized. So I had, a scholastic book that was the, 1001 best, Star Wars characters, where it would give you a front diagram, a profile diagram, and then I would go and draw them.
The visual dictionary
Awesome.
of these things.
Right. Of Star Wars characters, and then Star Wars vehicles, and then you would get, the other thing that I had a big obsession with was Marvel Comics cards, because I loved baseball cards like I was supposed to. All my friends loved baseball cards, but it didn't stop there for me. I loved the Marvel cards and the DC cards and the Star Wars cards, and it would give you like a power rating for each character and all that stuff.
So Dave, I want to jump in here. Where did you discover the Marvel cards or the DC cards? Like whichever you can too, because we had oddly enough, like I lived at one point, I'm old enough to live in a point where a card shop could have occupied retail space in a strip mall. And so like when you were going in and trying to buy a Bo Jackson rookie card from the rotating weird thing, you could also buy Marvel cards for like, you could get a sleeve of them for like $6, which is roughly what I had.
Oh yeah. I will say, so I had, my card shop was called Gold Glove Sports.
Sure.
Which was a bike ride away from my house. And it was where I spent the majority of my allowance. I had the requisite, the necessary Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card. I had one of those.
I still have my Shaquille O'Neal rookie card somewhere in a piece of plastic somewhere.
It's the one card that everybody felt like they had to have was their Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card.
Absolutely.
But then also, on a side stack, like in the back where you weren't supposed to go when you went with your friends,
right?
There was also an area where there were Marvel cards and statues.
Oh my God, we had the same fucking childhood 1,000 miles away.
Exactly. As I'm holding, as we're talking, I pulled out my Marvel cards, which are on my bookshelf near me.
Oh.
That is a Cable and Deadpool Marvel card.
There you go. Looks like Bruce Campbell.
It does look like Bruce Campbell. I'm telling you.
If I didn't have to walk away from the podcast, I'd go get the book that has all the Marvel cards in it in my closet because I'm a huge nerd.
So, Toph, I think I've kind of segued into your second criterion, which was what was your first thing where you went deeper than your friends. So, like my friends, when I was younger, they were all okay. They watched the X-Men cartoon series from '92. They watched the Batman animated series from '94.
Yeah.
But that's where it ended for a lot of people, and that's where it picked up for me. So I had Gold Glove Sports where I got my Marvel card fix, and we would, my favorites were the ones that would tell you what their powers are, and they would give you like a little power rating of, hey, this is how strong they are, this is how smart they are, this is their special power, whatever. And then right next door to where my dentist was, there was a Graham Cracker Comics, and that was in Illinois. If you went to a comic store, most of the time it was a Graham Cracker Comics. They are the big chain in Illinois, and it was the first time I ever walked in. I was like, "Holy shit! I can't believe that a place like this exists. This is what the inside of my brain looks like, and I can't believe that they allow somebody to be here right next to the dentist office that has, the best, most obscure toys from Toys R Us, along with, the backstories for all the Marvel cards that I had. For me, it was cartoons, then the cards had more information, then comic books I was like, oh, they make books about these guys too.
Yeah.
So that's where it went, like, that's where I determined, I was like, you know what, I don't need to tell anybody about this.
I have left my friend group. This is a thing for me.
Exactly.
Right.
This was a thing where, like, I'll talk to my brother about it, and he'll think it's cool because I'm his older brother, but I don't need to bring my Spider-Man comics in my backpack to school. Like, I don't need to do that. But that's where it went deeper for me.
Yeah, it's funny, the exposure to comic book cards. Comic book cards and just like comic stores was definitely like an epiphany for me as well. And my biggest thing was, where I grew up at the time in Michigan, there was a grocery store that me and my friends could kind of walk to, and right next to it was a comic book store, and maybe a jewelry store or a lawyer or something, one of the storefronts that I never paid attention to. But that all I remember from that tiny little strip was the comic book store and the grocery store. And it was funny, the only reason I actually started going into that comic book store was I was such a huge G.I. Joe fan. Mm-hmm. I loved the toys, I loved the cartoon, and once I found out that they made a G.I. Joe comic book series, I was like dumbfounded, and I went into this comic book store purely looking for G.I. Joe comics, and I bought like the first 15, I think, in original print with like the sleek cardboard backing and all that stuff, just so I could have them all.
Bag and
then glancing around the room, I go, look at all these crazy Todd McFarlane Spawn figures that just look amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. So that was definitely pretty poignant for me.
Brett, you fell into the Spawn and Venom and Vengeance, and Punisher, like I did.
Just from a look standpoint,
I did too.
I think I had a buddy whose name was Chris, and he was reading the Spawn comics, so he kind of taught me a little bit about them. And it was at that point that I was kind of like, oh, what is this Dark Horse? What is this Marvel? What is this DC? Yeah. And I immediately turned away from Dark Horse and got hooked on some of the Marvel stuff. So, yeah, comic book stores I think are a pretty fun little gateway for a lot of people to start diving.
And obviously, like, we all hope that local comic shops continue to be that gateway for people. But luckily, the internet is kind of that thing now. If you can't get to a comic shop, or the one in your neighborhood closed, luckily the internet has a comic shop, 1 click away, 2 clicks away. And now, I don't mean that literally, but I mean that community where you can go and talk about that kind of stuff.
Well, and like,
I don't want the military.
I don't want to be overly
about clicks away.
Miles? How many miles away is this?
Yes.
I don't want to be overly sentimental, but like, truly, half the reason I do this podcast is that, like, if 12-year-old me heard this, A, don't use any of the language in there, but B, also, like, there are a lot of people who like the things you like. Because, like, I got a copy of Watchmen when I was in first grade.
Mm-hmm.
And that was totally not the appropriate time to give a child Watchmen.
Right.
But I just went like, oh, there's a whole other thing that's not... Like, my parents had a very strict policy. Like, you don't get to watch TV or movies that are above your pay grade. However, you can read whatever you want.
Yeah.
If you're reading books, that's acceptable. So someone handed me Watchmen, and I was just like, oh, there's a thing over here. Like, I like this. And that sent me down that path of, like, and I remember going to school and being like, has anyone read Watchmen? And everyone was like, we watched Animaniacs. And I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, nope, this isn't the same thing. Okay.
You're not on my level, kids.
Don't clown on Animaniacs. There was a ton of science and intelligence.
No, it's great, but, like, I want to go in and talk about, fucking Horseshack, and these kids are like, they sang the song about Istanbul, which I like, but, like, yeah, that's not, like, that's not Watchmen. And so, like, I came to it as, I thankfully I have a family that's very artistic. I had an uncle who was giving me this kind of stuff and, like, giving me early runs of Iron Man and giving me early runs of, God help me, as much as I hate this fucking character now, but, like, Green Arrow and giving me Hawkeye. And so that, there are runs on that are really great. And so every year I could count on a drop of comics at Christmas Eve. It was just like, all right, someone's going to drop me off a year of this stuff that was just like hand curated. And I didn't have anyone else who was doing that or watching that. It was very strange that, like, like Star Trek could probably still get your ass kicked on the playground.
Yeah.
But it was like, never mind Star Trek. Like, I'm reading Watchmen, I'm reading Hawkeye, I'm reading shit that is just, like, so far outside of things. It's like, well, better not ask anyone about this, because they haven't heard about Watchmen, so they sure shit haven't heard about anything else.
Yeah. And for me, for a long time, and this probably explains my brain in a very weird way. For me, for a long time, it was all about the gathering of information. I wasn't like reading and absorbing stories. I wasn't, even when I had like full comic book arcs, I would read them out of order. I would like read them. It was more about like, what costume does Spider-Man wear at this time, and why is it like that? Or, it was all about gathering of trivia.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of being a nerd to me.
I agree. And
good.
And the other part of that, which I think ties into all of our conversation about the comic book stores, is it's the gathering of information and sometimes the gathering of stuff. Like part of my experience was just the fact that you could collect things, whether it be comics, whether it be the comic book cards, sets of figurines. I remember a poignant moment where I was literally playing with my father's tiny, 1.5-inch pewter Doctor Who's that came in a cardboard TARDIS. And I remember he got angry because I was denting their nose when I dropped them on the flat fold-out dinner tray in my house.
Yeah.
Which Doctor was it, though? Because that could have been canonical.
All five.
You could have come back to him and been like, hey, listen, this is canonical.
All 5 Doctors.
Yeah, at the time there were 5.
Yeah,
so.
I liked that.
So, and that brings us to kind of I think the third segment of nerddom is after you kind of figure out, like, you have a thing you love, you've moved on to a thing where you suddenly become weird. Like, your peer group is confused about, at least, let me reiterate, our peer groups thought we were weird for doing this. Maybe you had a much more accepting peer group, in which case, hallelujah, well done. Well done picking your friends. I mean, truly, I found Brent as someone who was interested in my bullshit, and I haven't let him go to the point that he's now stuck on a fucking podcast with me. Like, when you find the people who are interested in the bullshit you're interested in, fucking cuff them up. God bless. So what was the thing that also, like Dave kind of touched on it, but that thing that makes you go, I want to explore the entirety of this world. Like, whatever's presented to me, I got to get more of this.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and start, and this one is, I don't know if this is a similar experience to what everybody had in college, but when I started college was the first time when you could burn a DVD. So
that sounds complicated.
So when I got my computer for college, I talked my mom into needing one that was good enough and fast enough to burn DVDs.
Sure.
And when I knew that I was at like an extra level, a level beyond, was when I got to the dorm. I had already had like a pretty substantial movie collection, and it was important for me to see as many movies as I possibly could. It was important for me to know who was in those movies. When I discovered the Internet Movie Database, I freaked the fuck out. It was like heaven. So I needed to know the actors, I needed to know the directors, I needed to know who wrote it, I needed to know connections between the different writers that I liked and things like that. But more than anything else, I needed to have a comprehensive collection of the movies that you needed to own. So what I did was, when I got to college, my freshman year in the dorms was like paradise, where I would go from dorm room to dorm room and make friends with people just enough to where like I could get my hands on their DVD collection.
Like, hey, can I take this DVD for a couple hours? I'll bring it right back.
Exactly. And
Hi, I'm Dave. What you got on your shelf?
And I had, how your dorm room was big enough for you to fit like 3 shoe boxes and like a half a TV in. I somehow squeezed enough room in to have a full DVD shelf because I needed to show them off to people.
Well, you had done all that work to compile this collection, so yeah.
Exactly. So what I would do is, you'd have people come over to your place for, hey, we're going to watch a movie and do whatever. Then they would see your tower, and I would go, hey, what kind of movies do you have? You want to do a little Yankee swap, and we'll see what we got. And so
that was your gateway conversation to have a rapport with people. Yeah.
Exactly. It was like, hey, I have beer in here. Do you want to come talk? And it wasn't.
I have alcohol. Can you bring DVDs?
Yeah, it wasn't so I could make friends. It was so that I could get my hands on some stuff that I still needed for my collection.
Right. People are useless, but DVDs, now that's something we can talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, this was the way that I saw a lot of like the formative movies for me. We all talked about, we had that conversation that one time about best times to see movies, and a lot of those movies you see in your mid-teens, but like I didn't own those movies.
No.
Right.
I didn't have them. They just happened, across HBO, or they happened across, my parents' collection or whatever. So that's when I realized that wasn't normal, was when I realized that I had gone kind of beyond the pale. When the collecting got to a point where it was like I wouldn't say like a compulsion, because I don't want to like belittle anyone else's true compulsions, but
right.
It was real.
So, Brett, when was the point that you realized that you had gone between my first experience, suddenly I'm weird, like, what was the point that you realized, like, there is a piece of media that I'm super into that also has a world that I want to explore? Because, like, Dave has talked about how I think a lot of us have a compulsion, just like, I want to accumulate.
Collect, yeah.
But, like, what is the point that you decided, I want to collect, not just, like, I want to stack movies, which is a completely normal thing. Like, what is the point you went, I want to deep dive into and collect information?
Depth, not breadth.
Precisely.
Well, yeah, so I will answer your question with a very specific moment, but first I want to walk you a little bit through my trajectory. So, before I befriended Toph and we found a comfort zone with one another in our dorkhood, I had very much been aware of the idea that I was going down a pretty dark, nerdy path, which is always a tough place for a middle schooler, right? And so there was almost this like conscious line of demarcation where it was like, I am a nerd. Mm-hmm. I'm okay doing that at home and with certain sets of friends, but I'm
not trying to get my ass kicked every day.
Yeah. I don't have a backpack with something that brings any issues. I don't openly talk about my love for these certain things. I'm trying to have a backpack that looks normal.
I'm trying to have shoes that are similar to other people's.
Right. Shoes and or backpacks. And so you make best friends that way,
Sure.
And so there was all of this going on, and I remember very specifically letting all of that just kind of fester while, I allowed the social norms of middle school and high school to take their own path. The reason I tell that story is because I was very much in that mindset, and almost more so come college. And that was right when the prequels were being released and right when Lord of the Rings came out. And it was very, very rarely that I let anybody in on the fact that I was super into that stuff.
Let's be clear. Brett came home to be a nerd.
Yeah, and almost.
He was a rad, awesome party guy at college, and then he'd come home and nerd out with us.
Yeah, almost. I joined a fraternity. All my best friends were like the stereotypical jocks in high school and womanizers, and that's not me. And I still love those guys, and many of them aren't terrible people by any means.
They're pretty neat.
But they don't have the same, vantage point that I had. And in fact, I had so come to terms with that identity that my now wife, when I first started dating her, and she would come shack at my place, I got to a point where I was comfortable to say to her, hey, I have to go do something on the computer before I go to bed real quick, but I'll be right back. And she left it alone for a while, and it was after like 2 or 3 months that she realized like what was going on was something that she needed to ask about. And all it was me literally reading spoilers about Star Wars.
Wow.
Before I went to bed. I couldn't actually allow my brain to settle unless I had read on the internet what the news of the day about Star Wars was.
Ooh.
So I definitely allowed myself to dive into Star Wars and just know way too much about it. But long-winded answer, I think the moment where I found a place and a thing that I couldn't let slip by was when I first saw Lost. And, these same guys I was just describing.
A lot of shit there.
Yeah, the same guys I'm describing to you, fraternity guys, we all heard about this show. We started watching it together, and I was hook, line, and sinker into it after the very first pilot episode. And they were very interested. We binge watched it together. I handed out, the first season DVDs to anyone that I could, but I was the only one that would then finish the episode and hop online to read all the Easter eggs and read all of the subsequent materials that were released, like the tie-in novels, Bad Twin, and other things of that nature. Lost was a world that I thought meant so much more than a TV show could ever mean. And that's when I came back into the world of, it's okay to be a nerd, and letting people know that I'm a nerd is totally fine. I'm kind of an adult now. Let's just own it, love it, live it.
Yeah, I think that Brent might have the coolest I'm a nerd story of everyone.
Do I?
I think so. Because, while you were being, a normal person in college, I was delving into Hitchcock, and that was my first thing. That it was just I want to delve into the minutia of all these films. And then while you were I'm going to go ahead and be able to pull some of this back and be a normal human, I went to parties do you want to know what I just learned about Rear Window? No. And I was like, fuck you. I'm going to talk about it anyways. And then they left, and I was just standing on the porch by myself. I think the kids call it no chill. I came very early to the acceptance point where I like things. I like nerd things. I like sports. I played a lot of sports. I'm interested in things, and I just never gave up the distinction between if you like sports, then you're a sports guy, and if you like nerd shit, you're a nerd guy. Right. And I was no, these are all interesting things. All of these things are interesting. I want to talk about them equally, and this explains why I had a very interesting high school experience. I was just no, I'm interested in all these things, and I'm going to talk about them. Sorry, not sorry. Because I truly, when I watched a lot of Hitchcock, and my parents gave me a lot of this, and I was just oh my god, this shit is mind-blowing. And this is about the same time that Scream came out, and a lot of people were really interested in that, and I was okay, Scream is stupid, and you're all dumb, but have you seen Hitchcock? And they're what? And I'm no, but Scream is fucking terrible. You're all idiots. Please let me show you Hitchcock. And they're this is old, and he's dumb. Hitchcock is bad. Have you seen Scream? And I was no, fuck. All right, you know what? I quit. And that was the point that I quit on the zeitgeist in modern America.
I think there was a moment where, in my nerd evolution, where I had to realize that, and I'm sure you've gotten to this point as an adult, where I had to realize that other people could like other things that were different than what I liked, but that didn't come for quite a while.
I think I got to that point about 18 months ago.
So this is actually kind of a bigger part of the conversation, but I don't know if we should let Dave finish first, because I do have kind of a thought on our nerd experience, and I'd love to get there. But Dave, do you feel like we've heard what you deep delved into to let yourself really absorb all of what an obsession could bring?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the thing that I've dove deepest on, and the thing that I got caught on message boards, or sure. The only thing that I ever read fan fiction about, and not slash fiction, but actual.
Hey, some of that slash is really good. Don't be
that.
Weird.
But actual prose fiction, because I need more stories about these characters, is The West Wing. And that happened.
That's not the answer I thought you were going for.
Yeah, and that happened well into my adulthood, where I watched The West Wing later than it had already come off of television, and I had And I watched through it, and I was like, well,
I'm with you on that. I watched it on DVD for the most part.
yeah. And I was like, you know what? The second I watched the finale, I watched the last 5 minutes of the finale.
You were reading Josh Lyman fanfic?
I was just like,
or Seaborn. Which are you, Lyman or Seaborn?
I love Leo. Like, I want to read more Leo stories.
Oh, Jesus.
But the second I finished watching the finale, I went back and I turned the premiere episode back on and started again. We have to go back.
And you know the last 3 years of that show are fucking garbage, right?
Oh, they're fine. They're not as good as the first 4, but they're fine. They're good.
Wow, you really that's. I mean, and to be it's well acknowledged where Dave lives on the continuum of walk and talks.
Yeah,
walk and talk had already left the building.
So your Brent, your partner in crime was Topher, and Topher, your partner in crime was Brent.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, my best friend in high school, his name was Chris as well. His name was Chris.
Spoiler for the listeners: Topher's real name is Christopher.
Oh, I haven't just let that sink in.
That's so weird. God, that's such an awkward thing.
He was the person that I was able to share this obsession with. We would have parties or whatever, and when I was in high school, poker parties were all the rage.
Lemon parties.
We would play Texas Hold'em, and people would come over, and then everybody would leave, and I would stay, and we would watch fucking The West Wing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not kidding. And it would be we'd be watching, it would be Dule Hill. Oh yeah, Richard Schiff. We got super excited about the fucking West Wing.
Wow.
So it's the only thing that I have ever gone online and Googled Leo McGarry stories and just tried to read them to see if they're any good. And if somebody put out a West Wing the comic book, I would read it forever.
So here's a funny thing. Toph and I were friends, but we weren't friends because of much of the things we were enjoying in our dark caves of dorkery. He and I both had dads that watched Star Trek, and I think we admitted that to each other, but not in a way that was I kind of liked that show too.
No, we were friends by proximity.
Yeah.
I lived here and he lived there, and that was close, so we should be friends.
Correct.
So when did you guys then cross that border? When did it go from friends of proximity to hey, I'm gonna reveal my nerd to you?
I think the nerd was well established, but it was for all of the different reasons that nerd can be a thing. He and I made lame jokes together in French class. He and I,
also refused to learn French in French class.
he and I
we were more interested in making Batman jokes than learning French.
He and I absolutely would nerd out on certain music artists together at the same time or whatever. And so that was 311 was we wanted to know every 311 song. We didn't even smoke weed. We just wanted to know every 311 song.
I was sober. I just wanted to know all the 311 songs.
Yeah, and so it was exactly kind of what Toph's bigger point is, that our depth of interest in any one thing was much grander than anyone else. But it was much later, probably in our friendship, that we both acknowledged, oh, look at this really nerdy thing. You like that too? Me too. Great. Good.
Awesome.
Yes.
Oh, thank God. I've got a safe place to go now with this nerd thing that I really, really like.
Yeah.
But Brent's right. It all started from that everybody goes to that one place where you're I suddenly want to know everything about whatever.
Yes.
And I really feel I think this is a nerd differentiator.
Yeah. I'm not satisfied knowing, the bullet points that'll get me across in conversation. I need to know the 3 extra things that if I say it in conversation, people might be impressed. Or if I
you quickly gain an audience or build a rapport with a group when there's those in jokes or the oh, you get that reference too? It's this glance across the room or whatever, and you're
that's the nerd hand signal. Oh, you got that reference? All right, you are one of my people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get you.
So what I started to kind of allude to here a little bit ago was I wonder for today's generation, like today's generation of high schoolers, if some of those barriers to entry on allowing, people to know you're into certain dorky things is any lower.
It certainly is. And honestly, and as you were describing this, when you guys said something about like, I didn't tell everybody because I didn't want to get beat up every day. I honestly think it was a little bit different for me than it was for you guys. Like there were when I was growing up, I could talk about X-Men and I could talk about Batman because everybody watched the X-Men and Batman animated shows. I couldn't talk about the current comic arc that was going on, but I could say like, hey, that animated series is pretty great, right? And people would be on board with that.
That's the difference. Like, I think it's kind of a universal constraint, right? There's always going to be some stuff that's like, oh, like The Flash is on WB and Arrow is on WB. That maybe puts it into the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
But there are going to be people who want to talk about Deep Space Nine, and that's always going to be like a signal marker to other kids who get it, right? And that's what, like, again, I said it earlier. I'm going to say it again. If you're listening to this podcast and you feel like no one fucking gets you, people fucking get you.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, there are other people. It might take a while until you find the others who are into the same kind of shit, but, like, no doubt, there are people out there. So it might be easier to find people now than it used to be, because, like, I had to live concurrent to Brent to find a dude who was into the shit that I was into. Like, now Tumblr might make that easier to, like, go, there's another person who's into that. But, like, just rest assured, if you're into something, someone else is. It's okay. Be into the thing you're into.
Yeah. And that's kind of the bigger point that I think I learned along the way somewhere is that, I don't think even, attracting females and things like that doesn't have anything to do with whether you are or aren't into nerd stuff.
It's all about how you doesn't.
It's all about how you own it, know yourself, and acknowledge and or self-deprecate, the way you live. And so I do hope if there are, younger listeners or teenagers worrying about that stuff, that's something that gets through to them. And that's kind of the point I made is that I don't know what this current generation deals with, but I do think just the amount of nerd stuff that is in the zeitgeist because of the movies that are being released, because of the glitz and glam on TV with different series might help break down some of those barriers. We were products of the bully movie genres that came out in the 80s that maybe kind of have been weeded out. So.
And you know what? Like Brent said, there's always going to be movies that are in the zeitgeist. All of your friends are probably going to go see the next Avengers movie. Yeah. What you need to do is find the people who want to talk about it after the movie, like the people who, as they're walking out to their car, can't stop talking about what just happened in the movie.
Fucking chatting about it.
Those are the people. That is the reason why this show exists, is because we are the people who can't stop talking about the movie when the movie is over.
And I'm going to give spoilers. Nerds, we run shit. Spoiler alert. So, in the comments of this episode, tell us your origin story. What is the thing that you first recognized as the thing that set you on this path? Tell us the thing that set you apart from the rest of your peer group when all of a sudden you were into this thing and they weren't anymore and you went, wow, guys, you're really fucking missing out. Tell us the thing that you deep dove on and went, I have to have all of these things. Come to the comment section. Come to PopNerdery Talkback, safe place. We want to hear about your nerd shit because Lord knows we're putting our nerd shit here on Front Street. So with that said, head into the break. We're coming back with the C section with our recommendations. Stay tuned.
And welcome back. Really fun little dive there for us to talk about our origin stories. And right here in the end will be some recommendations that maybe will launch the future generation of pop nerds with their origin stories. So a couple recommendations, hopefully one or two from each of us. I have a few, but I'd love to hear Dave if you want to start us off, pal.
Absolutely. The first thing that I want to recommend is actually a book that I've been reading on my brand spanking new Kindle. There are often times where my wife will question why I'm an adult and I still read comic books, right? She'll question and she'll say, you're somebody who believes in the rational and believes in the a rational explanation for things. Why do comic books still
appeal to you? Yeah.
Right, yeah. Why does that still appeal to you? I don't understand. And honestly, if I could get her to sit down and read an entire book about it, what I would give her is Super Gods by Grant Morrison. I am about 5.5 chapters in, and what this book does is it really does a nice job of talking about superheroes in a way that helps me to kind of bridge that gap and really truly see them as like our modern mythology. And it goes back and it does two things very well. One, it gives you kind of a good background history of why the characters that stuck and what they kind of represent to us. And then the second thing is it does talk about why superheroes appealed to us in the first place and why they still do now. So Super Gods, one word, by Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison's one of our kind of favorite comic writers, but I appreciate that he took the time to give me all the ammunition I need to tell my wife why comic books are still a thing that appeal to me as a man nearing his 30s. The second thing I want to recommend this week is the finale of Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars. Just came out this past week, and this is one of the most well-reviewed Marvel events in quite a while. It's 9 issues, and I imagine we'll be getting a trade paperback in the next couple months. When that happens, I recommend it to you. The art in this story is by a guy called Esad Ribic. I've never heard his name pronounced, but he is one of the most beautiful. He gives one of the most beautifully drawn stories that I've seen in a while.
Can you give us like a really high-level overview of what the Secret Wars is? Pretend our listeners are as naive as Brent is.
Absolutely.
This event.
So Secret Wars is kind of like the culmination of not only the last 2 to 3 years of Jonathan Hickman's run on Avengers and New Avengers, which if you read Secret Wars and like it, I certainly recommend that you go back and read that. But I'm not going to ask you to read, 60 issues worth of comics just to read this 9-issue story.
That's weird.
But Secret Wars is the culmination of that, but also the culmination of like the last 50 years of the Marvel Universe. And what was really compelling about it to me was that it was a story where they brought together a lot of the most famous kind of event stories from the Marvel past and told what is essentially, for at least the foreseeable future, the last Fantastic Four story. I don't want to ruin anything, but suffice it to say that Dr. Doom and Reed Richards are right there at the climax of the story, and the way that they kind of wrapped it up and the way that they have set up the Marvel Universe moving forward is nice, but I think the way that they wrapped up the Marvel Universe that I know and love was even better. And I think it was a great kind of capper. I've talked about the way that I collect trades in the past is, I have my Marvel canon. This is a great, end point to that. And until they, publish something in this all new, all different Marvel that I like, that'll be the last thing that I get to read. And I really recommend it. The publication schedule was really weird and fucked up, but it was worth the wait. I read it on Wednesday. I reread through all 9 issues last Wednesday, and it was well worth the read.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Toph, would you like to hit up your Rex?
I got
next
a thing.
Here, pal?
So, as one who's never been afraid to buck against the zeitgeist, I want to recommend The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Volume 1.
Oh, good recommendation, but one that certainly has been maligned.
Oh, yeah. Alan Moore, Kevin O'Neill. If you saw the movie featuring certain elderly Scotsmen, who I love,
The League of Elderly Scotsmen would be a great movie.
Right. It would have been a better movie than we got out of this.
Yeah.
So
Billy Connolly.
Yeah, they shit on this franchise. Like, there's nothing else to it. It was fucking terrible. However, the book itself goes for, even just want to go for 3 trade paperbacks. Go ahead and get League of Extraordinary Gentlemen 1, 2, and the Black Dossier. These are books that truly kind of embody the spirit that was supposed to be in that movie, and they just shit all over it. Like, you know, when we've talked about a lot about like the Black Justice League, the Secret, I don't remember, the one that had Frankenstein and Dracula
Justice
in
League
it.
Dark. Yeah.
Dark, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dark. It sounds fucking stupid. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen actually presents these characters as people that you understand. Nero, Jekyll and Hyde, the Invisible Man, you know, Quartermain, and give them gravitas. Like, you actually feel for all of these characters throughout the course of this arc. It's one of those things where the movie really didn't do justice to the characters. Yeah. And I think that if you were at the least bit interested, go ahead, go back, look at the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's not just gentlemen. There are also some ladies.
Well, and I think I fell in the camp of when I heard about that movie and when I started looking at the casting, I was so excited about it.
I was pumped.
And it just did not. When you saw it, it was one of the ultimate kind of like nerd letdowns.
It was all bad.
Period. So I that's something I've never gone back and done is reread through that series. So I'm excited to jump on this.
Yeah, it's well worth it. It's not. It's what the movie should have been. And I think that, I mean, to be stupid, you can point at a lot of books and say, this is what the movie should have been. But truly, maybe more so, like it's better than Catwoman, better than Elektra, better than a lot of the failures. This is the thing that you can point at and go, this source material was fantastic.
Right. And honestly, this is one that I'd love to see as a Netflix series.
Oh my God, yes.
Could you imagine getting like 13 episodes, kind of like we got from Firefly, where that's like volume 1 of the comic series?
Quartermain, Jekyll, Nero, Invisible Man. Oh God, yeah, no, I'm fucking into that. Yes.
Listen, don't make him say these character names again. Just go read the damn thing.
I'll do it. The more you, because I love this book. I love all 3 of them, and it's funny. I actually read these books after I saw that movie, and I thought I really don't think I'm interested in this arc. And then I read the books and went, oh my God,
yeah,
oh God, what did they do? What did this movie do? Because it's fucking terrible, and these books are good. The books are really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, I think when that movie came out, I don't even know what era. I think it was early 2000s, right? I could look it up quick.
Yeah,
but
it was around the time, that, maybe slightly before the first X-Men movie.
I was going to say, like, it's before, you know, before network television was really ready to do episodic series,
for sure.
Yeah,
where you could have slow roll character development and things like that. So if it was going to take any other medium, it had to be a movie, and you know, you can blame that for maybe why things went awry. But my recommendations, unless you had another one, Toph.
Lord, no.
Read
the book. Brett, get us something out of here.
He just recommended The Lord to people. Yeah, so my recommendations also speak to an era where...
Jeez. Are you dying over there?
No, I'm good. Don't worry about it.
Just died. I am recommending something that the world... that references a time where the world wasn't ready for something as well. I actually just had the chance to sit down and watch the documentary Death of Superman Lives. Have either of you seen it?
I haven't seen it,
No.
but I have seen the original Evening with Kevin Smith, where he tells kind of a long version of this story.
Yeah.
And it has always piqued my interest.
Yeah, so this documentary just came out. It's almost 2 hours long.
Wow.
It's directed by a guy named John Schnepp, who really went out of his way to talk to a lot of people involved in this film that was supposed to potentially come out in the late 90s, where Tim Burton was going to do a Superman film. And, coming off of his success with Batman and things, he was thrown a lot of money. They did a lot of experimentation and tried to do something with Superman that hadn't been done in any of the Christopher Reeve stuff. Kevin Smith did a pass on the script, and then a few other people did as well. There were some images that came out just a few years ago that had kind of the nerd community up in arms because it was Nicolas Cage, looking very Nicolas Cagey with like squinted eyes and stuff. But they actually addressed that was literally part of a photo shoot on video where they just snapped a photo and he was blinking. And the suit that we saw was going to be on screen for all of like 3 minutes, and there were whole other costumes that were going to be what Superman was wearing most of the time. So whatever you think you know about that film, probably ought to give yourself a chance to watch The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened documentary, and just be ready for a lot of kind of silliness and just intrigue on kind of the behind the curtains view of what happens in Hollywood. They got one of the guys that was ready to produce the film to talk at length, and at one point he picks up the phone because he's got an important call, and the documenter is just kind of there drinking water for like an extended period of time. This producer's kind of a trip to watch. So it's a fun.
Is it John Peters?
Yes, thank you, John Peters.
That's the guy that Kevin Smith talks about in his little
Perfect.
speech. So I'm certainly interested to see this one to kind of flesh out that story for me.
Yes, yeah, and Kevin Smith definitely walks you through certain parts of it, and he's very Kevin Smithy, and it's fun. So just take a chance to watch this. It really is just kind of a comedy of errors in a lot of ways, how everything went down and why this movie never came to the screen. And after watching it, I guess I'm a little bit more kind of nostalgically wishing it would have happened, whereas I didn't think that would be my impression. So it was interesting. It is currently available on Netflix, so a lot of people should be able to get at that. And then the other recommendation, quickly, another documentary. I'm sorry, Death of Superman Lives is not available on Netflix. I watched that through Showtime, but it is available to stream through Hulu. Another documentary that I just recently watched on Netflix this time was called Chaos on the Bridge. Have either of you seen that?
No.
Have not.
Okay. Chaos on the Bridge is a documentary done by William Shatner about the beginnings of the Star Trek The Next Generation series, and just talks about a lot of the stuff that I never knew about Gene Roddenberry and what getting that series off the ground really meant to kind of the nerd community that followed Star Trek and then heard about this. That was one of the first kind of reboots, probably of its era. So many people were up in arms about the fact that they were starting a Star Trek series that didn't have Spock and Kirk in it, and it was really fun to watch just kind of what happened and all the things that the studio was trying to take control of, or Roddenberry was trying to take control of. And it's just kind of a fascinating look at how that all came together. So those are my two recommendations.
Very nice. I think we could do an entire B segment one day on like nerd nostalgia documentaries.
Yeah. Agreed.
Very nice.
I just might have shot my wad though, because those are the only two I've watched recently. So Gents, I think those are great recommendations by you. Hopefully you appreciate mine as well. It was fun to go back and take a look at our origin stories and see how we got to this point where we're hosting a podcast. Listeners, we hope you enjoyed every step along the way as well. We'd love to hear about your origin stories. We'd love to hear, what you have recommendation-wise for us as well. And I think for episode 10, that'll do us. Gentlemen, where can our friends find any of your musings?
Yeah. I tweet as the show at PopNerdery.
You can find me at the hospital ball, disparaging your favorite sports team.
And I can be found on Twitter at shouldn'tbragbutt. I think that'll do it for episode 10. And as always, gentlemen, finger guns.
Finger guns.
Whoa, that was awesome. I'm keeping that sound in. I don't know what just happened here.
I was going to say, do it.
Every single time we record one of these, I go back and listen, and I skip through to just listen to my parts because I just want to make sure that I'm not being just an absolute asshole. And then once I'm relatively secure that's like, okay, I sound like a dumb shit, but not like a huge dumb shit, I actually go back and enjoy your ports and skip over everything I say.
Is any of that what you just said true?
I'm dead fucking serious.